Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this educational webinar, Getting to Know Your Myeloma Canada Patient Advisory Council. I'm Gabriele Colasurdo, Manager of Education and Patient Services at Myeloma Canada. And we're happy to have all of the members of the Myeloma Canada Patient Advisory Council here with us today. Before we get to the presentation, I'd like to thank our sponsors for making these webinars possible. Amgen, Binding Site, BMS, Janssen, and Takeda. Without their support, it wouldn't be possible. As you've noticed, we're doing a lot more webinars these days because of the pandemic. A lot of the talks that have been coming out recently are talks that were reserved for our national conference that was supposed to take place last weekend, or about, I think, 2 weekends ago in Montreal. And so obviously that was postponed. And so our next webinar will be on Tuesday, May 12th. And this is our next English webinar. We have different webinars in English and French. And so our next English webinar is Tuesday, May 12th at 1 p.m. And it's relaxation and stretching therapies. We have an occupational therapist from the Jewish General Hospital in Montreal that will be presenting and answering questions. She's an occupational therapist that has an interest in therapies such as yoga. And so she kind of has the background of dealing with both working at a cancer center and also being able to know a lot about these things like yoga and other relaxation and stretching therapies. All of our webinars are recorded. You can access those usually the day after, or even sometimes the day of. Once the webinar finishes, it takes a few hours for us to add it to our YouTube channel. So if you go to youtube.com and type in Myeloma Canada, you'll see one of the first links that you get is Myeloma Canada's channel. If you click on the subscribe button, you'll get a notification every time we add a new video. So that's a good way to stay up to date with the latest. From our website, myeloma.ca, we have a menu at the top. You click on resources, this drop-down menu will come down, and then you click on educational videos, and that will redirect you to our YouTube channel where you can see the recordings. Lastly, before we get to the presentation, how do you ask your questions? And so on your GoToWebinar panel, if you're using a computer, then you'll have this little box here, and if you click on the little triangle that I'm pointing at right here, questions, this box will open up and you'll be able to type in your question. I'll receive your questions at the end of the webinar. I'll be happy to ask the questions to the members of the Myeloma Canada Patient Advisory Council. And so without further ado, David McMullen, thanks so much for taking the time today and for coming and present.
Thank you so much, Gabriella. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about the PAC, some of its history, what we do, and also to a degree how we interface with the Canadian myeloma community. So thank you very much for taking part in this webinar. So there is us. 7 of us now, and we'll just move ahead. Talk a bit about the primary purposes of the Patient Advisory Council. The number one purpose is to advise the Myeloma Canada Board of Directors on matters important to myeloma patients, caregivers, and support groups. We also provide the patient perspective on national and regional issues, because sometimes what's important in Atlantic Canada, for example, may not be as important in Western Canada. We serve as a conduit for information to and from the board and the Myeloma Canada professional staff to myeloma patients, caregivers, and support groups. We support and engage activities in regions which promote Myeloma Canada and its numerous goals. And we consult and participate in the development and execution of some of the Myeloma Canada programs. So I went too far there, my apologies. In 2014, Myeloma Canada identified that there was a need to have a patient advisory council as one of the Myeloma Canada advisory boards, advisory committees to the board of directors. So they selected me to be the first chair and to recruit other members of the Patient Advisory Council, which we did in early 2015. We had 4 representatives at that time, one for each of the 4 regions that we have in Canada for the Patient Advisory Council. One for Atlantic Canada, one for Quebec, one for Ontario, and one for Western Canada. We had Julie Salzman, who I think is well known, especially in Atlantic Canada and also across Canada. Ev McDowell from Ontario, another long-term myeloma patient and well known. Hervé Benoit from Quebec, who's quite well known there, and Laurelie Dalrymple, who's very well known in Western Canada and now across the country. In 2017, I stepped aside from the PAC because I wanted to carve out some time for some other important things that I needed to do in my life. And at that time, we decided that Western Canada is such a huge territory, going from Lake of the Woods to Yukon, and with a growing number of support groups. Actually, over the course of the next 2 years, we appointed 2 people to represent Western Canada, and that is Keith Taylor and Susan McLean. Likewise in Ontario, because we had a growing number of support groups in Ontario, and because of its vast population, we decided to have 2 representatives there. That is Glenn Hussey and Deb McKnight. Because Laurelie is stepping aside from the PAC, and also Keith Taylor, because they're both joining the board of directors. And Hervé has completed his 2 terms. That's our maximum in our terms of reference. We like to rotate people from the myeloma community to take part in the Patient Advisory Council. We selected 2 new representatives, one from Quebec, that's Manon Veilleux, who is increasingly well known in Quebec, and Phil Harbridge, who is relatively new to the myeloma community, but has made really impressive contributions over the past year or so, and there's no doubt that you will hear more about Phil. So some highlights of last year: we make reports to the board on a periodic basis, providing our comments and recommendations. We make contributions to the Myeloma Canada operational plan. We provide advice on feedback on numerous documents that Myeloma Canada creates, including submissions to government and health agencies. One significant one last year, CADITH, which is the national organization that provides advice to the provinces on reimbursement of drugs and medical devices. They were asked by the provinces to look at optimizing the pharmacology for transplant ineligible patients. What that means is kind of streamlining the treatment program, and we provided our feedback, and basically our message was that there's no one size fits all for a myeloma patient. We are all unique individuals, and unique in terms of the myeloma disease and the treatment. So we, along with Martine Elias and Gabriella, put together a submission to CADITH, and we hope and believe it was received as good information. We review new educational publications from a patient point of view. Last year, for example, was the Myeloma Caregiver's Handbook, the Autologous Stem Cell Transplant pamphlet, and a new one, Managing Pain and Fatigue. We also provided advice on a new app called the Myeloma Monitor, which is a system that patients and their families can use to track their blood analysis results, other information about their myeloma journey, contact lists, and the like. And I've seen other apps like this, and in my view, this is the best one so far. So if you have a chance, you may want to have a look at that. It might be good for you. A few other highlights. Members of the PAC took part in other committees and initiatives. We have a committee on early diagnosis where we try to educate primarily family physicians, but other healthcare professionals on the importance of asking the question. If you see symptoms that could be myeloma, ask that question. And it's important to get a diagnosis as early as possible. So we are promoting that. We provide advice and input into planning the Support Group Leaders Summit. We are active in advocacy work, advocacy for new treatments. And sometimes we have applications of existing treatments to get the best access possible for myeloma patients to drugs and treatments. And we have one member who participated in the Myeloma Canada Research Priority Setting Partnership. We also participate in info sessions and meet and greet sessions, support group meetings, the support group leaders and advocacy summits, the scientific roundtable. That's an event that takes place every year where myeloma doctors and researchers from across the country get together and exchange experiences and plan future research. Also, some of us take part in the national conference. An overriding activity or activity that we do is to ensure that the specific concerns, needs, and other suggestions from all regions in Canada are heard. Last year, I'm sorry, I'm having a little trouble here with the mouse. I'll go ahead. Anyway, 2020, some of our main objectives: to continue to expand the voice of the patients and caregivers and support groups in all Myeloma Canada activities, interact more with support group leaders. And this is something that we've really started to advance on. We had a reach out to many of the support group leaders talking about any thoughts and advice they might have regarding the COVID-19 situation, and that expanded into quite a broader discussion. We have a support group leaders survey that we'll be sending out shortly, talking about succession planning, and we intend to interact and seek input and feedback from the support group leaders, and these relationships with the support group leaders are increasingly important to us, and something that we will emphasize over the year. We will align our activities with the Myeloma Canada's strategic plan, and of course the planning, delivery, and evaluation, improvement, and services of all regions in Canada, identifying gaps in services, and we're looking at some of our internal processes to make ourselves more efficient and effective as a PAC. So some highlights so far this year to date. I mentioned that we've selected and brought up to speed 2 new members, both of whom, Manon and Phil, are really starting to make some major contributions. We've participated so far in 5 info sessions, meet and greets, and educational conferences. And I've got them here. It's actually 6: Lethbridge, Grand Prairie, Red Deer, Sudbury, Granbury, Comox. We would have done 4 more if it wasn't for COVID. One in Cornwall, Ontario, Newmarket, Trois-Rivières, and Abitibi-Témiscamingue. So we attend these sessions for 2 reasons. One, at times we share our experiences as myeloma patients and sometimes caregivers as part of the meet and greet or info session. And also it's an opportunity for us to listen to the group there, voicing their concerns, the nature of the questions they ask. It helps us do our job better in knowing what the concerns and needs of the myeloma community are. Last year, there was quite a large survey that many of you remember, done by a company called Leger, looking at concerns and suggestions for Myeloma Canada. So we reviewed that, and again, looking from the patient lens, provided advice to Myeloma Canada on that. Something new with the COVID-19, we provided advice to Myeloma Canada. What's some of the best things that Myeloma Canada could do to help the myeloma community deal with the challenges of COVID-19. And we've been preparing to launch the Support Group Leaders Survey on succession planning, which will be going out shortly. Other highlights planned for the rest of the year. It'd be similar to what we did last year, modified due to COVID-19. We won't have as many in-person events to attend. There'll be more done electronically. As I mentioned, we'll conduct a report on the Support Group Leaders Survey on succession planning. And there could be other activities that we don't know about right now, like the COVID-19 appeared without knowing in advance. So we are prepared to do that and help in that regard. So that's us. For me, you'll see interim chair. I offered to take part as a chair for up to a year after Laura Lee had stepped aside, because I've done it before, and so I've got experience there. But again, my term is interim. Before the end of the year, I too will step aside, and we will be selecting a more permanent chair. So what we'll do now, one by one, is introduce ourselves a little bit more and talk a bit about our background and our interest in myeloma community and the PAC. So start with myself. I'm originally from Edmonton. I now live in Hamilton, Ontario with my dear wife, Erica. Hope you can see that. Isn't she beautiful? And she's beautiful in so many ways, including being a wonderful caregiver. I'm an engineer by trade. I was diagnosed in early 2012. I had my first stem cell transplant in June of that year. It was very effective, but I relapsed 3 years later and had a second transplant, again, very effective with a good remission that lasted for 3.5 years. Now I'm on a daratumumab combination, which is working. A month ago, I had something new. I had leg pains caused by a plasmacytoma in my sacrum at the base of the spine. So for the past week, I've had radiation therapy, which provided amazing relief with minimal side effects. It's another example how the technology for treatments for us has improved so much in recent years. The day I was diagnosed, my nurse at the Cancer Center, Wendy Bursey, kindly handed us a Myeloma Canada patient handbook. I think most of you have seen this. If you haven't, it is the best simple publication about myeloma for Canadian patients. Wendy, by the way, took part in a very good presentation 2 days ago, another Myeloma Canada webinar. If you haven't seen it, you might be interested. It's about the newly diagnosed patient. We will be forever thankful to Wendy for doing that. It was hugely valuable to us. We read it from cover to cover, and then we went on to the Myeloma Canada website. And there, we discovered that there were 2 myeloma support groups not far away from where we lived. We soon attended a support group meeting in Toronto. The group was most welcoming, open in sharing their experiences, and provided reassurance that we were on the right treatment path. Soon afterwards, we attended a Myeloma Awareness Day conducted by a support group in London, Ontario. Later that year, we attended a Myeloma Canada info session in Toronto and the annual Myeloma Canada National Conference, which that year was in Winnipeg. These events were most helpful in providing education and the opportunity to meet and share experiences with many other patients and families. We were encouraged in how many patients carry on living vibrantly, contributing to their communities, and enjoying their families, friends, and many activities. This, again, is in large part due to the major advances in myeloma medical treatment in recent years. In the fall of 2012, I joined the steering committee of the Toronto Support Group, and later became the co-chair of the group. And Eric and I helped Norma Linder established the support group in Halton Peel, and later I also joined newer groups in Waterloo and Hamilton. I was very fortunate to become involved in many Myeloma Canada activities. I've got a strong interest in research, so I attended the Scientific Roundtable in 2013, and become engaged in the Myeloma Canada Research Network, including being a member of a team preparing a submission for a large research grant. The Myeloma Canada board asked me to recruit the Patient Advisory Council, as I mentioned, and I've also taken part in various advocacy initiatives, most of the support group leader events, all the national conferences, the marches, and based upon the suggestion of Aldo Del Cal, the founder of Myeloma Canada, I'm a patient representative with the Canadian Cancer Trials Group, and also part of a CADIF patient group as well. So all of this work and involvement has been hugely meaningful to me. But most meaningful are the many one-on-one conversations that I've had with patients to listen understandingly, to share experiences, and to offer encouragement. We are honored to be associated with Myeloma Canada. We do have, and I've had a chance to observe other organizations, we do have one of the best cancer patient organizations in Canada in terms of education and support, promoting myeloma awareness, advocating for treatments, research, and empowering the myeloma community. A huge benefit to us from all this involvement has been the opportunity to meet so many amazing people we have within our myeloma community. We are blessed with having so many kind, thoughtful, dedicated, and engaged patients and families. Living with a challenge like myeloma as a patient or caregiver can be most humbling, but it can also bring out the very best in people. So thank you very much. That's me.
Great. And I'd like to introduce myself as David McConkey. I'm the Atlantic Regional Rep, and I live on an island off of the island of Newfoundland in an outport where we operate on island time a lot. And there are volcanic rock trails that go along the coast. And on occasion, I can see icebergs and whales. I'm basically where I want to be, doing what I want to do for the most part. Gardening. Those who have known me for quite some for a long time know that my roots are from Ontario, and I was a family counselor there in a non-residential children's treatment center for over 25 years, basically supporting families in accessing resources as well as the emotional support and counseling. And I also am known as a bit of an artist that does weaving, illustrations. I was part of Old Men Dancing at that time as well. And many people knew me as a long distance endurance runner. So that was sort of how I was identified and what I relate to and the things that I'm passionate about. I'm very much still committed to living life fully and not just having a medical experience. And it was only in 2010 that I was diagnosed with myeloma, and had never heard the term before that I was aware of. Like many people, when you get diagnosed, it was just something out of the blue. I had no idea what myeloma was. And my goal at that point in time was to walk without pain. And searching on the internet and the way I felt, the information I was getting sounded like I would only live for about 2 or 3 years. And I figured that would be lucky considering how I was feeling at the time. The good news is I was able to get radiation on a plasmacytoma that was pressing on a sacrum nerve, and alleviated that, and was considered smoldering for a period of time. And then in 2012, I ended up having a stem cell transplant. And about 16 to 18 months after that is when I started doing different drug regimes. And definitely I'm a strong advocate for the oral, more portable drug treatments. For me, it's about a 6-hour trip between the ferry and the driving to get to where I receive my treatment. So it's really important. When I was on an oral drug for 3.5 years and only went in once a month, that worked out really well. So I really support people who are in sort of more rural, remote areas that that would like their treatment close to home and to be something that accommodates their lifestyle and where they live. So there's been a number of different drugs that I've sort of been on over a period of time. I'm presently on the daratumumab with the it was with the Velcade and dexamethasone, having some long-term effects from some of those things, such as the dexamethasone. And so I got involved with Myeloma Canada. It was kind of gradual. Initially, I wasn't interested in relating to groups, especially if they were a bunch of sedentary old men, which is not the stereotype anymore for myeloma. When I actually got together with people in the group that I'm a part of, and so I'm a support group leader now with Myeloma NL, and that's something that I really feel very committed to being a part of that group at this point, and being able to provide a voice for people in the Atlantic region is really important. There's a number of issues. We have a province in Atlantic Canada where people don't have access to daratumumab yet, unlike the rest of the country. We also have a group that was very meeting in Moncton, and because of COVID-19, they haven't gotten the group up and running. So there's lots of things that need to be done and addressed there. Myeloma Canada has been the go-to for me as far as reliable information that I can count on through my journey. And so I feel very committed to being a part of Myeloma Canada, and I really appreciate their awareness and their advocacy and a number of things that they do for supporting their support group leaders as well. So it sort of was a natural progression to be a part of the Patient Advisory Council because of that. And I might add that as far as some of the roles and things I mentioned, I don't readily identify as a patient. I identify as a person living with myeloma. And for me, the term patient is a very small fraction of time when I actually see somebody at the Health Science Center. But no, I really appreciate that we've had time today to share and be available to people who might want to discuss further in terms of how we can move forward the agenda of people living with myeloma. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Manon from Montreal, and also living near Quebec City on Orleans Island. I was diagnosed in 2014, and this is when I received my first stem cell transplant. This is also when I received a big box from the nurse with a lot of information in it, so that I never saw Myeloma Canada. It probably was in the box, but I never saw their information in this box. So it wasn't until 2018 when I received my second stem cell transplant that I discovered Myeloma Canada. And this happened while I was sitting in the waiting room. There was a poster right in front of me where Myeloma Canada was searching for someone to start a group in Quebec City. So seeing the name also of Myeloma Canada made me think they're probably specialized, only deal with myeloma. So I called them up to verify. And I was very happy to discover that the myeloma community had its own organization. So they answered all of my questions. And the Quebec City group was founded in February 2018. So I think this is the best thing that happened to me since that horrible news, because it made me meet fantastic people and learn a lot about managing myeloma too, because actually these are the two major reasons why I started the group, because I find it's important that we stay together, meet other people, not stay alone, and stay informed about managing myeloma, because since the cure is not here yet, we have to manage it. And I was convinced that the more you know, the less anxiety you will go through when it's time to make a decision. So, and I'm very happy I made it. It's really a good decision for me. and I believe to the group too. They're very happy about the group. And this brought me also to know more about the team behind the name Myeloma Canada. I discovered that the force of their engagement to this cause, and they moved me more than often, which brought me once in a while to try to help. And because of the difference that they bring to our lives, you want to help. You see them work hard, and that's how I felt about it. So when they offered me to join the PAC, it was like a natural step, because I feel that we're also part of the fuel to the team, and also because I believe it's very important to have our voices heard. That's the main reason why also I joined the PAC. It's their principal task. This brings me to tell you that I'm very honored to represent Quebec, and that I hope that very much that I will hear from you. So the reason we're there is to hear about you, so that you share your concerns, your needs, anything. That's why we're there. We're really like the bridge between all of us and the board of Myeloma Canada and the team. So I really hope we'll hear very much from you. Thank you.
Hi everybody. I'm Glenn Hussey, and it's a pleasure to speak with you today from what is currently sunny Ottawa. I was diagnosed with smoldering myeloma back in 2006. After being sent for routine blood work by my family doctor. For the next 11 years, every 3 or 4 months, I would troop off to the hospital to have my blood tests and my blood work, see the doctor a day or two after, and everything remained stable. So it was blood work, hello to the doctor, and away I'd go. So I sort of put the whole thing in the background because it became part of a routine. In April of 2017, now this is the 11 years later, I went in for my to see the doctor, and I was notified that I needed to start treatment immediately because my numbers were now very high. I was basically informed that without the treatment, I had 2 to 5 years to live, which was a little bit shocking at the time. Because my spouse was quite ill and in palliative care at the time, I actually delayed my treatment until the fall of 2017. And when I did start, my initial chemo treatments were not very successful. So they changed the drugs, and my numbers started to go down. In the summer of 2018, I had 2 stem cell transplants and some wonderful side effects such as pulmonary embolism and pulmonary infarction and all sorts of nice goodies that came along with it. I'm currently on Revlimid for maintenance, and I'm actually doing quite well. Doctors tell me I'm currently in what they refer to as stable disease, but I'm still considered apparently high risk. When my treatment started, I wanted to know as much as possible about myeloma. I had put it in the background when I was regularly doing the blood tests, but when it suddenly became real, for me, I needed to research, I needed to understand what was really going on. And I had received an information package from the hospital, which included information about Myeloma Canada. I attended a number of Myeloma Canada's information sessions in my search for information. I researched their website in depth and other websites such as that of the International Myeloma Foundation. I became a member of the Ottawa-Gatineau Community Network, and I also got involved with the Ottawa-Gatineau Myeloma Walk, which is called Steps to the Cure. I became interested in the Patient Advisory Council because I saw it as an opportunity to give back and an opportunity to highlight patient and caregiver needs, issues, and concerns. As a retiree, I'm able to use my work experiences and background to help wherever I can. Thank you for listening.
Hello, everyone. It's great to be here and to be a part of this. My name is Deb McKnight. I live in rural Ontario. I actually live in a little place on the Trent-Severn Waterway, which is usually pretty peaceful, except when all the cottagers land, but that's another story. So prior to being diagnosed, I was working as a licensed insurance broker. I had my whole life always paid attention to fitness and nutrition. At the time, I was fortunate, it turned out to be very fortunate, to be involved in all different types of fitness, but one of the more sedentary ones was yin yoga. And no matter how ill I was, it was something I was able to do even when I couldn't walk. So as an aside, I would just say, if you haven't checked out yin yoga, no matter where you are in your journey, I highly recommend it. So I was first ill early in 2016. I became increasingly ill as the year went on, and I went a very long time, saw many doctors with no diagnosis. So by the time I was diagnosed, which was December of 2016, I was in pretty rough shape. Started on Cybor D. I had a stem cell transplant in June of 2017, and I can happily say that I achieved a complete response, and I'm in really, really great health today. So that's a really wonderful thing. I found Myeloma Canada through a brochure at Princess Margaret Hospital. I was so fortunate. I live a couple hours east of Toronto, but I was so fortunate to have Dr. Donna Reese, who many of you know, as my transplant doctor. So that was really great. And of course, she is a wonderful advocate for Myeloma Canada. So that's where I first heard of them. That's where I first became aware of what they could offer and of the Patient Advisory Council. I really love being part of the PAC. I love the positivity of the group. I love the interactions between the people in the group, and the small little team that looks after our needs there at Myeloma Canada is outstanding and just so wonderful to be around. So that's my story, and thank you very much for listening.
Okay, I guess on to me. Hi, everybody. My name is Phil Harbridge. Very glad to get this opportunity to begin to get to know others and to share our story. I'm one of the newest PAC members and most recently embarked on this journey of myeloma. I'm originally from Edmonton, and I now live in South Surrey, BC, but I came here via Minnesota, Colorado, and some time in Kitchener-Waterloo, Ontario. I'm happily married for 36 years, and I have 2 grown daughters, a son-in-law, and a little granddaughter who will be 3 months old on Monday. I've worked the last 40 years or so with young people, youth and young adults, as an educator, pastor, and a mentor. But one of my passions is running, as David McConkey shared as well. I've run numerous marathons, innumerable half marathons and other races, but it's that quiet, peaceful daily run that I find very cathartic and necessary. And in fact, it was on a run in 2018 when I had a bad fall, the only fall I've ever had really as a runner, and I broke a rib, which led to a doctor's appointment and the admission of fatigue and back pain, and then a discovery of anemia and then eventually a diagnosis of multiple myeloma last February in 2019. I did the whole Cyborg D regimen and a stem cell transplant in July last year. My oncologist, actually I have two, Dr. Song and Dr. Shustek, they knew that I would be curious about finding out more and suggested Myeloma Canada. And like Glenn, I scoured the website. I read everything I could get my hands on. And I also discovered, apart from lots of different resources, I discovered a support group, which I've never been a part of, but I thought it would be a great thing. And so I've been attending a very welcoming, just a great group in Surrey, the Surrey support group, for a year now. And I also serve on the steering committee. Participated in Myeloma Canada webinars. We had a strong team involvement, Team Harbridge involvement at the Myeloma Canada March last year. And we came in first in Vancouver and 7th in Canada for fundraising. And it's been helpful to be a part of some conferences south of the border as well, with Myeloma Crowd and Health Street. But I've also enjoyed the numerous one-on-one opportunities to just talk to people and encourage others that are living with multiple myeloma, even though I'm a recently diagnosed patient as well. I'm looking forward to continued opportunity on the PAC to listen to others and to support initiatives and to promote healthy treatment. So thank you, that's me.
I'm the last. I'm in Western Canada. I live on Vancouver Island in Nanaimo. My name is Susan McLean. I'm a mother of 3 children who are very happily married and grandmother of 3 more. And before I was diagnosed, I was a high school English teacher. I was very involved with my students in my career. And not only was I teaching, but I was also seconded to the ministry on a part-time basis to work on new curriculum, and also did volunteer work with the BCTF as the president of the BC Teachers of English Language Arts. So I had a very full and active life. I was also did a lot of yoga and went to the gym regularly and walked my dog. So I was fit, I ate well, I was healthy. I was diagnosed in November of 2016 after 6 months of extreme fatigue and 6 broken vertebrae. I also had a transplant in May of 17, and again, I was fortunate to be in complete remission, and I still am. And I'm feeling healthy and great, and I'm back to all my active fitness things that I was doing before. In addition, I joined a group at the conservatory. I'm retired now, by the way. I never went back to work. I joined a music group at the conservatory, so I play with a group every week. And I'm also trying to relearn French, which I've forgotten in the 30 years since I lived in Quebec, and part of a French conversation group. I got involved in the myeloma community when I heard about the local support group. And like everybody else, I had no idea what was going on or what myeloma was all about. And I thought that would be a good thing for me. So I got involved there and became the co-support group leader. And from there went on to the support group leader conference. And that's what got me really interested in the Patient Advisory Council, because I was sitting in this room, in this hotel, this conference room, and I've been to many, many conferences and actually put on many, many conferences as well. And I was just amazed at the quality of the conference and how well things were put on, and the camaraderie and the joie de vivre that I saw in the room. I thought, this does not seem like a room of cancer patients. Like, this is a party. Looks like a really lots of fun. I think I'd like to be part of this. So that's kind of what attracted me. Initially, I had a lot of support from a few individuals and also from the support group that I was involved with. And I thought, I'm feeling great, and now it's my time to give back. I've always done volunteer work, and because now I'm retired, I didn't really feel that, after 3 or 4 years away from the education system, that I would be the best person to be working in that field anymore. So I just was looking for something new. It seemed like a good way to give back, and and also to challenge me a little bit intellectually and meet some absolutely wonderful people. So that's a little bit about me. I really hope that you will reach out to us and that we will, not just me, but everybody, I know I can echo this, that you will reach out to us and get in touch with us, because we would love to hear from you. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you everyone. David, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, so here, as you mentioned in the past, there have been some previous PAC members. So
Oh, yes. This was an important slide that I guess I skipped over too quickly. Thank you, Gabriella. But yeah, honor and thanks to previous members. Laurie Dalrymple was engaged right from the outset of the PAC, and she chaired it for more than 3 years. So thank you, Laura Lee. And Laura Lee has moved on now to the board of directors. Hervé Benoit, as I mentioned, has been there since the beginning. He's completed his 2 terms. Keith Taylor has made tremendous contributions to the PAC, and he too now has moved to the board. Julie Salzman, as I mentioned, a well-known myeloma patient, actually smoldering, but is still very much a part of the myeloma community from Nova Scotia. And Julie Gibbons, a caregiver from Ontario, and Ed McDowell, who is very well known locally and across the country. So thanks so much to the previous members and contributors to the Patient Advisory Council.
Thanks, David. And with that, we'll open up the questions. It was really nice to hear from everyone, to hear all your stories. And I think from some of the comments we're getting, it was much appreciated by our viewers on the webinar. And so we did get a few questions here, and so the first one comes from someone who's living with myeloma, and it's kind of a hard question, I think. But what's the one thing that you've done that has really helped you deal with your diagnosis and living with myeloma? So essentially, like, what is it that works for you? What's as the person who asked the question, what's the secret sauce?
Well, could I suggest, we can all answer that question, but if everybody could keep their answer really brief, so we have time for more questions.
Yes.
For me, the highlight is meeting all the amazing people and the inspiration I get from them.
Yeah, for me, meeting all the, like you say, David, all the people, and mostly staying informed how you manage myeloma. That way it reduces anxiety, and the better you manage it, that makes a difference. Thank you.
Thank you.
For me, it's just take every day as it comes and live your life to the fullest and do all the things you want to do whenever you're able to do them.
Wonderful, Deb. Thank you.
I would echo that. For me, the biggest thing is what I would call normality. I try and follow a similar process and schedule as before I was diagnosed. I'm a fitness fanatic. I still do it. I try and maintain it and follow as much of a normal lifestyle from before I was diagnosed with myeloma. So nothing has really changed for me. It's just something that's in the background I'm dealing with.
Okay.
For me, I have to echo what other people have said, but 2 things in particular that helped me, especially at the beginning, was making sure I got out every day. Even sometimes I could just only make it to the end of the driveway and back, but try to get out for a walk. And what really helped the most was being in the nature. We have trails down the road, so I could get down there. That really helped. And my fitness really helped. And I know Deb mentioned yoga, and I can't do yin because of my fractures in my vertebrae, but I do a lot of hatha yoga and meditation, and that's been a real lifesaver, especially the breathing part.
Thanks, Susan. Phil?
I would say for me, it's been bingo and belly dancing. No, I'm just kidding. No, I agree with Glenn. The routine and the schedule. In fact, I agree with everybody's comments so far. The idea of staying healthy, going for a run. For me, I read a lot and I pray a lot, and so those things all have been helpful in dealing with it, and just being positive, being encouraging of other people.
Thanks, Phil. And David?
I think pretty much I would agree with everything people have been saying. I just think it's important to do the things that bring you joy in life and commit to doing those on a regular basis.
I will say though, I'd like to see a video of that, Phil, of Phil.
No, trust me, you wouldn't.
Maybe next time we meet in person, we could put that on the agenda.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Well, thanks for those answers. And if I can just also comment on that, I think a big part, we heard from everyone that a big part of it is getting to meet other people who are sharing similar experiences, or who have perhaps lived with myeloma for a bit longer than you have, especially when you're newly diagnosed, and so that's a big part of what support groups are, and it's also a big part of what our Myeloma Canada National Conference is the networking aspect, where you get to meet people from who travel to one city to come and meet others and get some inspiration from them. And so it's unfortunate due to the pandemic that we've had to cancel it this year, but I'm sure there'll be more opportunities in the future. The next question I have here, and this might be a little bit of a personal question, so if you're not comfortable with answering it, then that's fine. But there's a listener here who wants to just wants to have some information, because some people mentioned some people that are on maintenance mentioned what maintenance drug they're on, but some didn't. So for those who didn't mention it, would would it be possible to maybe just give the details of what the maintenance therapy that you're on? Again, only if you're comfortable sharing that information.
Absolutely, I am. In my case, I started off with Revlimid and I was not able to take it. So for maintenance, am currently on Ninlaro. I take one oral pill every 2 weeks, and it's working well for me. And yeah, so that's me.
Okay.
I didn't either, and I was initially on bortezomib for 2 years, but now I'm finished that, and I'm not taking any maintenance drugs at all.
Okay, I'm taking Revlimid in maintenance since 2 years, and it's going wonderfully. I really tolerate it very good, very well.
I'm also on Revlimid, and 3 weeks on, 1 week off. It seems to be going well, other than having to juggle a handful of side effects, but it seems to be working well.
As I mentioned, I'm on Revlimid as well. I initially started out with a combination of Revlimid and Ninlaro following my transplants, but I'm now just on Revlimid alone, and I take it every day.
And I'm on daratumumab once every 4 weeks with Revlimid and dexamethasone, and it's keeping me stable. Yeah, I think that's.
And
yeah.
yes. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, David.
David, why don't you finish, David? It's okay.
No, I'm done. I'm finished. Go ahead, please.
Oh, okay. I know that a lot of people now end up with a Revlimid sort of maintenance after their stem cell transplant. That wasn't the case for me. It wasn't the common practice at that point. So I wasn't doing anything after the stem cell transplant until things got active again. And it's pretty much been active treatment and switching from one thing to another. And I did do the daratumumab with Velcade and dexamethasone. And after about 8 or 9 cycles, like David had mentioned, I'm on maintenance, but it's not being very effective for me. So we're currently revisiting that in terms of where we go with it. So I really haven't been doing a lot of maintenance. It's been, when I did Revlimid for about 3.5 years, but it was actively keeping things down at that point at a high dosage. Yep.
Great. Yep. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. So here we have another question with regards to support groups and how many there are in Canada, and I guess I can take that one. And I think there's about I think we're in about 44 or so, if I remember correctly. So in the 40s. The other question we got here has to do with the places like the Yukon or the Northwest Territories or Nunavut. Are there any support groups there? And again, I can take this one unless someone else wants to do that one. But I guess I'll go ahead. Currently, we don't have support groups there. We've held events in Whitehorse, Yukon, and we've held events in Yellowknife, Northwest Territories. But so far, we haven't been able to find someone who is willing to volunteer and to start a support group. So if there's someone on the call here from those areas, we'd be happy to work with you to start a group. And I'm sure the PAC would also be happy to work with you to start a group. And that brings us to the next question. Well, what if you live in an area where there's no support group? You know, can myeloma patients and families reach out to the members of the PAC for information?
Sure. Anybody?
Of course.
Susan?
No, I would say absolutely. That's what we're here for. And I had somebody contact me from Squamish not too long ago and actually joined our Facebook page because they weren't part of a group there. So absolutely. It might be a good idea to see where the nearest support group is too. And if you're in a smaller community and maybe you go to that city once a year or so, maybe you could time it with their meeting and meet people that way. But I think one of the things that's going to be very helpful is now we have Zoom for our meetings. And so if you, again, were near a support group, but maybe not within close enough to be able to attend the meetings, you might be able to ask to join in through Zoom. And I think that would be a great way of connecting with people.
In the Ontario discussions with support group leaders, we had recently a number of the groups have extended, following what you said, Susan, have extended an invitation to people that were in areas that didn't have support groups to join them virtually, to be part of their group where possible. So that option is there, and it's a terrific one for reaching people that do not have a group close to them and haven't had one set up yet.
Yeah, I would say too that one of the pluses to this pandemic is that we have many more support group leaders that have come on board with Zoom conferences, with lots of Zoom meetings, and use that as a way to connect, as well as teleconference and all those technical other ways to connect are there, where maybe before they weren't, but now they're much more mainstream. And I think definitely you just need to reach out. There are ways, and with that new technology, there's no reason to feel like you can't connect.
David, did you have something?
I would support. Yes, I would support what other people are saying here again. The Zoom has really been helpful. For us, we have members who are living in Labrador, but they may come in for treatment to St. John's. So again, we try to sort of coordinate that with people if we know they're coming in, to connect with them, if not the full support group, to know that there's always a chance to meet with a few members over a cup of coffee after their appointment at the Health Science Center, what have you. But the Zoom has really been helpful, because in our last support group meeting, we had a couple of people who called in from Labrador that were a part of that. So the distance really has been cut down in terms of not being able to make it to be a part of the group.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. And so for for someone who is starting a support group, or who is in the process of starting a support group, is the PSC available as a consulting body when it comes to that?
Sure, because some of the members of the PAC, the PAC, are also group supporters. So we're there to answer your questions, your concerns, like we had when we started. So reach up to us, write us an email, call us, and we'll discuss it in private.
Yeah,
And definitely,
I would say that there's.
Go ahead, David.
I think that in addition to contacting people with the PAC, the staff at Myeloma Canada are wonderful to help work through that as well. So I think you've got two major channels there that can help you explore that whole piece. Yeah.
Absolutely. Like Michelle Awana, she's the director of community relations. She provides tremendous help for people who are interested in establishing a support group. But you can also talk one-on-one with us, so we can share our experiences and help you point you in the right directions for other advice from Myeloma Canada.
Yeah, and so thanks everyone. And just to remind everyone, all the contact information that you see on the screen here, that's also available on Myeloma Canada's website. So you can contact each member of the Patient Advisory Council that way. Now we had a question come in about COVID-19 and how it's impacting treatment regimens for those who have been recently newly diagnosed. And maybe I can start off this question, answering this question by saying, we did have a webinar on the issue, and basically, at the time, a few weeks ago, the transplants for newly diagnosed patients were being delayed. There was longer periods of induction therapy, so the chemotherapy that you get at the beginning right before the stem cell transplant. And so yes, there's been that kind of effect, and a lot of people have been put on oral medications to avoid for them to be going to the clinics. And so I don't know, does anybody want to add anything to that?
One thing that has changed, and I think people are aware of this, we often don't have in-person clinic visits, but we're using the telephone, sometimes visual means of having clinic meetings with our doctors remotely. It's quite impressive how the healthcare teams have adopted to this situation, and they're still looking after us.
I just have one thing to add there for people who are worried about that. One of my daughters is a nurse and her husband is a physician, and they're both working in a hospital. And whenever I get worried about things like, oh, this isn't happening soon enough, she always says to me, Mom, you never want to be at the top of the list. If they're not dealing with you now, it's because you're okay to wait. So maybe that will be reassuring for people who are waiting and who are a little bit worried about that.
Okay, thank you. So we one last question here. We are a bit over time, and we are at the last question. And so this is a pretty simple question. If you have a concern or a question, pertaining to Myeloma Canada, is this something that you can direct to a PAC member?
Sure, absolutely. We are prepared to have a conversation, share our experiences and the like, and also provide you with the advice on who within the Myeloma Canada professional team could best help you. We know them all. We know them all well, what they do. But in addition to getting that assistance from the team, we can also share our experiences as patients with you. So by all means, you're certainly welcome to contact any one of us at any time. If you have a concern or question, if there's a concern, then we would like to know about it, so that if it's something that impacts things that Myeloma Canada does, we can provide advice to them, which is our prime mandate.
Thank you, David. And with that, I'd like to again thank everybody, all the members of the PAC and our viewers for joining us today for this webinar. I hope that that you got to know the PAC and that they'll receive a lot of emails and with lots of questions, because that would be great. Now, just to remind everyone for the next webinar, so the next English webinar that we're going to be having is Tuesday, May 12th, relaxation and stretching therapies. You can register for that on our website, myeloma.ca, in the news and events section. Then you choose info webinars and events, and we hope to see you there. So yeah, thanks everyone, and have yourselves a great afternoon and a great evening.
Thank you so much, Gabriella.
Take
Bye.
care, everyone. Stay safe.
Stay
Bye.
safe.